Hi, I'm Kevin York, the president of Kevin York Communications.
And I'm Kayla Gonzalez. I'm strategist at Kevin York Communications.
And this is a new video series we're starting called Between Two Drinks, where we will introduce an alcoholic beverage that we're each going to have during the broadcast and talk about various marketing topics that have been in the news during the past week, or just random thoughts that we have on our head. So with that, I will introduce the beverage of choice for me today. Here I have a Plum Island Belgian White from Newburyport Brewing in Newburyport, Massachusetts. It's a Belgian White, as I said, a wit beer with a little bit of coriander in there. There's not a ton of it, so it doesn't overpower you like some other ones. But I chose this one for today because I wanted to kind of get me in the mood for spring. Not that we had a long winter here in Massachusetts, especially not compared to last year, but I'm in the mood for spring now. Warmer weather, short sleeves.
Sounds
So
good.
hopefully that's around the corner for us.
Excellent. Sounds delicious. Well, I, on the other hand, have Prosecco today. Kevin's in Boston, like you said, and I'm actually in San Diego. So we're a little bit on a time difference here. So it's actually 10 o'clock my time. So I thought maybe I'd go a little different angle with mine. It's Luca Prosecco from Sicily, Italy. And it's really nice, crisp, refreshing, 10 o'clock style drink.
Hey, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, Kayla. Not
That's
here,
what I'm
not
saying.
there, but
It's
somewhere.
right, exactly. And it's Friday, so
Yeah,
gotta
why
celebrate.
not? Why not? Well, cheers.
Cheers. Delicious.
So before we dive into marketing topics, I wanted to bring up one point that I'm actually not sure you're aware of because we haven't talked about yet. But everybody's kind of in the sporting world focused on March Madness right now, the big
Yes.
NCAA tournament.
Mhm.
But a lot of people don't realize there's another basketball tournament going on right now called the NIT, which is for all those teams that either weren't good enough to make the big tournament, or for small schools, those schools that got overlooked by the selection committee. And in cases like my alma mater are bitter and angry about being overlooked. But the
Mm.
NIT Final Four is next week, I believe on Tuesday, and both of our alma maters are in the Final Four.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
Valparaiso and San Diego State, yeah, and they're on opposite sides of the bracket, so we could
You
be
think,
at a KYC showdown for the NIT champion.
uh-oh. You think I should know that I did graduate from San Diego State, but I am that typical girl that doesn't really follow sports much.
Yeah,
I see them on TV, but
especially with the NIT, nobody really cares about that one, but I guess
all
not.
right.
So,
Then I get a little ways away from that then, huh?
yeah, yeah. If they both win their semifinal games, we may have to put a little KYC wager down on the game.
All right. Well, I'll go for my team then. That sounds good. I should do that.
One game at a time. We'll see if we can both get to that championship. But
Well, from what I hear, San Diego State's pretty good, so we'll see.
yeah, Valpo was, but they say that every year they win their conference in the regular season and then lose the conference tournament, so miss out on
Ah,
the NCAA appearance. But an NIT championship would be a nice consolation prize, I suppose.
oh, definitely. Anything's nice, huh?
So now with that out of the way, we can dive into more of the marketing topics that we have on the agenda for today.
Sounds good.
The first one here is the change that Instagram made last week, going to more of an algorithm-based model for its photo stream.
Correct. I saw that. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people in talking about this, we're talking about the effects that it would have on brands. And of course, we want to frame this in a way that pertains to our clients and prospective clients. So what does this change mean for brands? Now, for a lot, it probably will mean that the organic reach of their content will take a hit. When Facebook made a similar change a few years ago, what tended to happen was those pages that were publishing too much were penalized for it. So it was Facebook's way of kind of pushing quality over quantity. So that's what most people expect will happen with the Instagram change. I guess we'll see, but I think it's definitely something that brands need to be aware of because no longer will we as users see everything we'll see what Instagram thinks we want to see, which, whether you like that or not, that's the route that a lot of these social media channels are going. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes total sense too, because especially with that huge push with the influencer relationships that's been trending in the last couple of years, it's been growing so largely. And I saw in that in this article that talked about the Instagram switch that they say that the influencer recommendations carry 22 times the weight than a recommendation from an average customer. So, it'll be interesting to see what direction that takes with Instagram now not being like the organic reach.
yeah, I think influencer marketing could play a bigger part in it, because brands are going to be forced to look for quality. And a lot of these influencers who they may not even be working with right now have quality content that they could be tapping into. It's just a matter of figuring out who those people are that influence your audience. So one of the things that really stood out to me is, in this is really the case for all social media channels, but for some reason it still seems to strike some people as new. Quality matters more than quantity. But it's easy for people to say that. What does that really mean for a brand? I think what it means is you need to really have a good understanding of who your audience is and what they want to see, what motivates them, what inspires them. So with Instagram, I think awareness and engagement are the main kind of goals or objectives that brands would set for that platform. There's not a lot you can do with conversion. People just haven't seen success with that. It's difficult to put links into a description, and
Right.
so I
Right.
think engagement is the big one there, with awareness being kind of a secondary goal. So Instagram users seem to be a little bit more willing to do things like a photo than, say, people on some other channels, favoriting on Twitter or liking on Facebook. But what
Absolutely.
what do people need to do now to get comments out of those people instead of just likes? That's kind of the next step of engagement. And to really do that, you need to know what's your audience, what's driving them. And I think a lot of brands don't have a solid understanding of that. They think they do, but they're really just kind of guessing, and in more cases than not, hoping that they're right.
Well, yeah, and that's true too, because right now with the switch beforehand, you could just keep posting and posting and posting, and yeah, of course you're going to get that bigger engagement rate because you have more to go with. So now that it's going to be limited, they're definitely going to have to focus on what is going to drive the most engagement with a smaller amount of quality or quantity that they're posting. So it makes sense.
Right. And I think one of the things that brands could consider doing is doing kind of a mini audit on Instagram. Really look back and see what was successful with the content they've been posting, but then take it further. Look at competitors, see what's really resonating for the people who you're trying to target, and figure out, based on that audit, what kind of content you should be doing. And if you do one correctly, it'll really inform you, and it'll really tell you what those people want to see and how you can actually reach them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes sense too, because right now data and analytics is such a huge thing. Well, why not audit something like this as well?
Right, right. Analytics is kind of a good point to kind of tie in our next topic, which is share of voice.
Mm-hmm.
Something I've been noticing over the past couple years really is that share of voice as a KPI metric for programs is really going down. I'm rarely hearing people talk about that. And it interests me because 5 years ago, that was like the metric. That was what every CEO was looking for from his PR, social media, communications group. What's our share of voice? How does that stack up against competitors? And I I don't hear that much in pitches anymore. I don't hear it from clients. I rarely read about it in industry news, and it's just kind of fascinating to me how it just went away.
Right. I mean, I know we talked about this briefly yesterday a little bit, but share of voice wasn't even something that I was, super familiar with, because I just graduated from San Diego State in December, and it is something that was brought up, but I don't think that that was the major thing that brands or even any company really that have been focusing on as much these days, because I think with our talk about the influencer relationships, and now people are focusing more on what are the reviews about, it's word of mouth. They want to know what your customers are saying to each other, and other customers looking to other customers to hear, the good, the bad, the ugly about everything. So that, I feel like, is more of the push nowadays versus, what are the major articles saying about your brand. It's more like what are everybody else saying about your brand.
Yeah, to me, share of voice was always kind of a flimsy metric anyway, because it was basing your program off of what everyone else was doing. So you were trying to keep up with your competitors and looking at what everybody else was doing, rather than looking at your own program and what your audience wants to see. And more often than not, an article that mentions you will at some point mention one of your competitors as well. Either
Right.
full paragraphs on you, full paragraphs on them, or an article that's 80% about you and mentions them as a competitor at the end. How do you quantify that in terms of share of voice? Because the article focuses on you, but it also mentions your competitors. So do those carry an equal share of weight, or do you only count it for you and not for the competitor? That's not the correct way either. But to me, it was kind of a silly thing to focus on. And then even when a lot of these platforms that would measure share of voice tied in social media, that was also limited, because the LinkedIn and Facebook at that time were so closed, you couldn't measure those. So you were really relying on Twitter. And Twitter's easy to just inundate people with mass amounts of stuff. So if you've got some competitor out there tweeting all day, they're gonna do really well with share of voice. But are they connecting with your audience at all? I think the market has matured to realize share of voice is not the metric above all else. And there are a lot of other metrics that I think better align to marketing objectives that people should be focused on. And most importantly, focus on your audience. Share of voice didn't do that at all.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and nowadays with brands moving forward to focusing on their niche, particular targeted audiences, this is really important to kind of move forward with focusing on what's important, your audience. Mm-hmm. So it definitely makes sense.
Well, we haven't seen much about share of voice lately in the news. We have seen a lot about the presidential election. Now, I don't want to get into any kind of policy discussion here, because that doesn't really focus on marketing.
Right.
Right. We all have our own personal opinions, which we don't need to talk about here. But
right.
What has really stood out to me has been how transparency has affected this election cycle. There's really been one candidate in each major party that has really embraced this transparency, this forthrightness in some instances. You could even say this bluntness behind their speaking, whether it's in person at events or it's on social media. And I'm not sure that there's a reason that this has come about. One of the candidates, of course, Donald Trump, likes to pride himself on not being a politician. The other one, Bernie Sanders, has been a politician for a long time, but he's kind of always had this very straightforward, transparent, honest style to what he's saying. But the voters have really, on both sides of the aisle, kind of been captivated by this, and it's really drawn them in. And I wonder, what are the effects of this going to be? If we kind of tie it to more business world, I think we've seen this from some executives. If you look at someone like a Mark Cuban, the owner of the Mavericks and numerous other businesses, Aaron Levy at Box, even to a bit of a lesser degree, but still on the right path, Tim Cook at Apple, you see executives who are just more transparent, more honest in their conversations with media, some of them online. Of course, Donald Trump with his social media, you can tell it's him running his Twitter account. There's no social media manager or comms person running that. It's all from him. And whether you agree or disagree with what he's saying on Twitter, I think everyone can agree it's good that the actual candidate is the one tweeting.
Absolutely.
Which I think coming out from this, what are other politicians going to learn And how is this going to be talked about years from now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and being transparent is it's a huge thing. And again, tying everything back into, what is it that your audience wants to see and hear, and being transparent and showing that you're the real person behind the social media is really important to your viewers and to everyone. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this all turns out. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I question if media training is going to change some as a result of this. Not necessarily with business leaders, but certainly with politicians, where I think for years they've been trained, if you get a question you don't want to answer or you feel like you can't answer, you deflect and turn it to something else. I think Trump still does this a lot. But if you look at Bernie Sanders, I remember after Super Tuesday when he took a beating, he was being interviewed on MSNBC after it, and they asked him about it, and his response was, "Yeah, we got decimated." And it was nice to see that honesty behind him, and there wasn't some move like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz have used when they get second or third place and then throw a rally announcing that they've won. People see through that, and I think everyone saw through that. It's part of the reason Rubio's out of the race now. But I question if years from now, all policy questions aside, we're going to look back at this election kind of similar to how people look back at the election between Kennedy and Nixon, when that was the first opportunity for televised debates. And you can see how much that changed the nature of elections. There was a whole new component there that people were looking at. You could see these people. You weren't just hearing their voices. I wonder if this election maybe looked back at as transparency, honesty, social media. I think Barack Obama really changed how social media is done. But it wasn't him actually publishing social media posts the way that Donald Trump is. So I wonder if other politicians will look at this and take some of this and use it 2 years from now, 4 years from now in their own elections.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a good direction. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with this race.
Yeah.
It's a big one. Really. Lots of talk about it all over the world. So
Indeed. And I'm sure we'll talk about it more here because there'll be lots to talk about. And there's still how many more months that we have to suffer through hearing about it.
Exactly. Well, speaking of being transparent, I actually saw a commercial, and it was by Pure Organics. And one of their message pillars is they craft these things called Parenting Unfiltered. And I really liked it because I thought that it took a really great new approach on being transparent. They basically, I think the commercial was maybe 40 seconds long, but it showed the ugly side to parenting, but yet it still made it seem very beautiful and saying, yes, parenting is hard. Let me show you all these things that you have to go through. But at the end of the day, you're still doing it right. And so I just thought that was really brilliant on their part to really show like the ugly truth in a sense, but they're targeting the right market. They're saying, yes, we understand, we feel your pain, but you're doing a good job.
Yeah, as a relatively new parent, I think that is a refreshing approach to hear, because as a new parent, you hear so much about the right way, the wrong way to do things. And when my wife and I met with our daughter's pediatrician for the first time, she said, you're going to have to develop a filter. And there are certain things you'll listen to, and there are certain things you'll smile and nod your head and then let it go right out the other ear, because everybody's going to throw you advice. And what it seems to be happening more is there's an understanding that there is no right way. And I think to a certain degree, brands that were targeting parents before kind of framed their product or their offering as the right way to address something. So to see this type of approach, being a new parent, I think is refreshing, and it's the type of message that new parents want to see.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
You know, another commercial that's caught my eye lately is it's actually a series of commercials from GE, where the intent of the commercials is to get people applying for jobs, largely engineering jobs at GE. You might remember back during the Super Bowl, there were some commercials that were stressing GE as being innovative. It wasn't just this stodgy old company, and it sort of poked fun at the reputation or the heritage that had developed over the years as not being seen as innovative. Innovative people want to work for startups, and it really poked fun at that and was nice to see. These new sets of commercials are really going hard after getting people to apply at GE rather than some of these hot startups. The reason that these have really resonated with me is because they're so targeted. We talked before about Instagram needing to, brands using Instagram needing to target their audiences better. This is a really good example of GE using a commercial, which is a mass marketing tool, to target a relatively small group of people who could apply for this. I mean, the commercials aren't really targeted at you or I. We have no engineering skills. We could never apply for those jobs.
Right.
But they're targeting those people and they're showing it to everyone. And I think with those of us who are not engineers and wouldn't apply for those jobs, it's helping with awareness of the brand more. But to see that level of targeting, I'm a big fan of targeting, as you know, is refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to see, you know, in all of my courses for my my degree, we would review all of these commercials from the past, and how it's crazy the difference to see how they just did like a blanket like push to everyone and then in the audience, you know, with the traditional marketing. But nowadays with this push to go target marketing, they're really doing a good job with focusing on who it is that they want to reach specifically. So it's really cool, I think.
Yeah, usually it's a little more subtle, whereas you'll get a brand like a soda brand or something appealing to adventure seekers. So there will be people skateboarding or snowboarding or something in the ad, which I think on a deeper level connects with those people. But this is just outright saying, you know, we're targeting job applicants.
Come and play. Excellent. Well, anything else you have for me today, Kevin?
I think that's all we've got for today.
I think so. It was a nice little wrap up of this week's marketing push.
Well, have a good weekend, and until
Thanks
then.
so much.
Cheers.
Well, until next time for our Between Two Drinks. Cheers.
Cheers.